Welcome to the course on all about customized Linux installables and installations. My name is Rahul Jamgade. I had done CISSP, RSCE, CCNA and MCP certifications. I have worked into the IT industry in the area of systems and networks, handling infrastructure of IT companies. In this course, we will be looking at various types of Linux installables and Linux installations as per the needs and the scenarios. We will be having step-by-step hands-on session on how to create customized live installable media and also cover all the types of Linux installations so as to get better insight of the procedures and provide us with the confidence when we actually perform the task in the field of IT. The topics that will be covered under this particular course include Introduction to Linux installation, types of Linux installations, basic Linux installation, network-based Linux installation, Linux live CD customization, Linux installable CD customization, creating bootable USB stick, and finally we will wrap up the course with takeaway points that we have learned during the session. Let us understand a couple of points about the Linux installation. First one being, it's a one-time activity. That is, once the installation is complete, we are not going to install it again for the same purpose. Smooth installation. It is very important that the installation should go smooth without any glitches so that there won't be any issues at a later stage, and also it gives us a level of confidence that everything is installed properly. It's a step-by-step procedure. Here we made sure that all the necessary steps are taken into consideration with proper explanation as and when required, so that you understand as to why we have followed certain steps or executed certain commands or parsing of certain parameters. Used VirtualBox for hardware system. Here we have used Oracle's VirtualBox. However, you may use other virtualization platforms such as VMware according to your taste and level of comfort. However, rest of the process or procedure remains the same. Installations, various scenarios. The scenarios will differ depending on the purpose of installation, quantity of installation nodes, availability of resources, customization required, etc. And the scenarios could be individual system for personal use. These are the systems that one require for personal use, such as for home use. Customized Linux operating system distribution. If one need to have multiple systems with identical software configurations, including particular set of applications. Just try out with hardware and software, that is live CD. If we need to test whether the particular version of Linux will run properly without any issues on a particular hardware platform, then one can try out the live CD version. Once everything works fine, then one can actually install that version of Linux operating system on a particular hardware. Large scale deployment. In case of a large company or organization that require hundreds or thousands of nodes with particular configuration requirements, then one can go for such kind of installations. Also, if we do not have sufficient human resources or we are short of time, even when we can opt for this option. Here generally an automated installation is done over the network. Prerequisite for Debian Linux. Here as we can see, it requires processor of Pentium 4 with 1 GHz frequency, and for no desktop environment it requires minimum RAM of 128 MB, recommended RAM is 512 MB, and hard disk requirement is 2 GB. And if you want to opt for desktop environment, then the minimum RAM requirement is 256 MB, recommended is 1 GB, and the hard disk requirement is 10 GB. Similarly, the prerequisite for Ubuntu desktop edition is it requires 2 GHz of dual core processor, 4 GB of RAM, and the hard disk space could be hard drive with 25 GB of free space, or it could be live CD. The display card should be VGA with 1024 by 768 screen resolution. A installer media is required, of course, which could be CD DVD drive or a USB port or network boot support. And internet access is helpful for the updation during the installation process. Types of Linux installations. Linux has various methods or ways by which one can install it depending upon the scenarios. So without much ado, let's see what are those scenarios. Various methods of installations. Why? Here is the answer. If we have a single system for installation, this is just like an individual computer or a desktop for home user, or for that matter a single node that is required for small office. Multiple systems need to be installed quickly. If Linux need to be installed on thousands of workstations in an organization that may be identical or with different vendor specific Linux installations for various departments, then such requirement arises. If customized installation is required, if multiple servers are required with the same set of software configurations, or multiple nodes that are required for particular project with certain specific software requirement, then this can be used. Customized operating system testing without installation. If one need to test the hardware or software environment without actually installing it, or making decisions whether to install or not, or to opt for any other hardware, then this option is the best option. Saving the internet bandwidth. If you have a network repository of installation files, then you don't need to connect to the internet for software installations and updates. And also, in case you have limited internet bandwidth due to the location constraints, then such installation can be very helpful. Saving the overall installation time. As the installation is network based and can be automated, hence manual intervention is not required, which helps to speed up the process. Unattended installation is required. If you have limited human resources, or you want to make sure that no manual error should be involved, then unattended methods is the way for installation, which is the best way and is less prone to human errors. Various methods of installation. Let us see what are those methods. The first one being basic Linux installation. Here we just need a CD, DVD or a USB drive, and the process is generally straightforward and does not require much customization, except and unless you require specific partitioning scheme. Everything is a guided process. Network based Linux installation. If you do not have a CD or DVD ROM drive attached to your computer, or you want to install numerous systems simultaneously, then it's a good option. We can even install specific distros or specific version of a distro according to the hardware configuration depending on the MAC address of the system. Yes, this is perfectly feasible. Linux live CD customization. This option is good in case you want to just try out certain versions of distros on a particular hardware platform without actually installing it. Linux installable CD customization. This is helpful when you have installed and configured a system as per your requirement with certain set of applications pre-configured and other hardware and system settings done to suit your requirement. Then you want the same settings and configuration replicated to multiple systems. Creating bootable USB stick. It is helpful when you do not have a CD or a DVD ROM on the system, or you want a portable media to be moved between locations and want a handy installable. Basic Linux installation. We will have a look at various ways of Linux installation, but before we proceed with another ways of installations, it is very important to understand the basic way in which Linux operating system is installed specifically for the beginners. So let's begin. Let us see why we opt for the basic Linux installation. And the reasons are: no advanced knowledge is required. That means with very little knowledge, or even if you are aware of Windows based installations, one can opt for the Linux installation as well. No initial preparation is required, as Linux supports various and numerous hardware, and hence not much of initial preparation is required. It's user friendly. That means that even the beginner with little knowledge can install it. Because Linux provides textual as well as graphical mode of installation, and hence it is extremely friendly. Step by step, straightforward process. It provides such a linear process of installation that you cannot get lost in the midway. It gives you confidence during the installation even if you are a newbie, not dependent on external factors. With just a CD or a DVD, or for that matter with installable USB device, one can complete the installation process without internet connectivity, network connectivity, and even if you do not have any online accounts. Prerequisite for basic Linux installation. Irrespective of the distro that you are trying to install, following components are required. One is hardware, where you need a CD-ROM drive or a USB drive, and basic system with NIC card. This is an additional advantage if you want to update the system during the installation process itself. And on the software part, it requires Linux installable for the Linux installation process and Linux repository in case if you want to install additional applications or software. It could be on the CD DVD or on the internet. Here we will install the Linux operating system in a manual way. We have selected the Oracle VirtualBox over here as a virtual machine. It started booting and started checking the disk. Once you are completed with checking the disk for its integrity, it will ask you whether you want to try Ubuntu or install it. We'll opt for installing it. Next, it asks you to select the keyboard layout. Here it shows me the option whether to have a normal installation or a minimal installation. We will proceed with normal installation. Also, it asks me whether to download updates while installing the Ubuntu operating system. I have not opted for that as it will take much longer time. Next, it asks me to partition the hard disk. Let us partition it. First, we will go with the /boot partition, which is of 500 MB. Note that it is a primary partition. The /boot partition is a primary partition that contains the bootloader, a piece of software responsible for booting the operating system. Next, we selected a 10 GB of partition, which is a logical partition with ext4 type of file system, and the partition name is /usr. This is one of the most important partition as it contains all the user binaries, their documentation, libraries, header files, etc. Next, we have selected 15 GB of root partition with ext4 type of file system. Next, we have opted for 10 GB of partition as /var partition. It contains variable data like system logging files, mail, and printer spool directories, etc. Next partition is again, which is a 10 GB of partition /opt. This directory is reserved for all the software and add-ons. This directory is reserved for all the software and add-on packages that are not part of default installation. Finally, we selected the swap partition, which is a virtual memory used to swap the contents with the RAM in case it runs out of physical memory. Finally, we selected the option to continue. Next, it asks you for providing the time zone. Here we create a user, as you can see, and provide the password. This is the system user that will be using once the installation is complete. It starts copying and installation of the files on the system. I have fast forwarded it for your convenience and time saving purpose. After installing and copying relevant files, it finally completes the installation, as you can see over here.